here again, and it's supposed to be over 100 tomorrow, and then another 10 days of it. I've never seen, and I'm sure history is long, but I've never seen heat start this early in the Northwest in June and run all the way into September. It's been too damn hot. I'm sure many of you are seeing weather extremes as well, and if you haven't, buckle up because it's coming. A lot of things are coming. Big things, unprecedented things in the next 3 or 4 months, maybe this month. And I again want to add that I have heard the suggestion multiple times now that an asteroid impact somewhere on the planet, a sizable one, is certainly not going to be a surprise to the powers that be. I'll leave it at that. MGM, in another sign that things are never going back to the way they were. Well, never is a long time. I'm using it advisedly. They're not going to return. It seemed early on, had this pandemic been handled differently, and there was really a will or a desire for things to stay relatively normal, which there wasn't. That was never the organization or the idea. They would have done things differently early on. Well, look at Sweden. All right, Sweden is fine. It's not bankrupt, it's not broke. No masks, no distancing to speak of, and they're doing fine. There's a lot going on with this report that only 6% of coronavirus fatalities had only the virus and not underlying conditions. That is suggesting to a lot of people that if you get the virus and have nothing else, only 6% chance of dying. But other doctors are stepping up and saying now, no, not necessarily so, that comorbidities or underlying health conditions with the virus added can certainly kill you. The virus can do things to exacerbate conditions that are already present. So there's another way to look at it. All right, now, man, it's too hot, too dry. Excuse me. MGM, in another sign, I think I said that earlier, that things are not going back to normal, laid off 18,000 employees. MGM Resorts International, 18,000 already furloughed workers in the U.S. are being laid off. This is just 3-4 days ago now. I think many of you saw the story. Here's another story. It's funny. This is out of one of my stations I used to be the news director and anchor at, KTNV in Las Vegas. Let's see what they have to say about this. MGM Resorts announced additional layoffs. Yeah, they did. This is not a good sign for many reasons, not just to do with Las Vegas, but this is a national indicator that things are not going to do well. Here's my old station. Let's see what they have to say. If I can get the sound to work. All right, let me back it up. And just a second. Okay. Well, this does not want to play. Interesting. All right, well, maybe I'll get it to work later. In the meantime, we're going to go to Las Vegas itself and talk to our correspondent colleague there, Gary Holland, who has been watching this whole nightmare. And if you remember, Gary and I worked probably as hard as any one or two people could work on that Las Vegas massacre, which is ancient history now, isn't it? All gone. None of the investigations that we called for and that we partially conducted were ever followed through by any of the so-called authorities in the state of Nevada, especially Clark County. So no big surprise. They got away with bloody murder. All right? Gary, welcome back to the program. Thanks for being on tonight.
Good evening, Jeff. How's it going this evening?
It's hot. How hot is it down there?
Yeah. Actually, we stayed below 100 degrees today, which is nice, seeing that we've had I don't know how many days straight it was of above 115 degrees. So the ones in power of the weather, control, that strange high pressure system over us for weeks. And I know it hit up in your area too. I think if I remember right, that high pressure went up from the southwest, and it's kind of strange because they allowed the monsoon rains and the monsoons to go up into southeast in Phoenix and the southeast part of Arizona, but they literally cut off the monsoon flow into southern Nevada and mostly all of Nevada, and we just were baking. I mean, there was a lot of days that we were hotter than Phoenix was. This was about 2 weeks ago, and it was just incredibly hot and very dry. Most people understand, a humid day in Nevada, and where I am, especially in Las Vegas area, is maybe 11 to 12% humidity, and you do notice it when it gets above 10% humidity here. It hits you really hard. That days we were actually below zero on the dew point, and I think we were running at 1% humidity. That's how dry it was. It was just extremely dry.
Pull the phone back away a little bit. We're getting a little bit of popping and crackling. Not much. Just pull it back a little. See how we do.
How's that?
I think that's probably better. Yeah. The reason, and I was there. I worked there for 3 years, and I left. And I know what you're talking about. The humidity. I got off, and I've told this story before, but I did get off at midnight after doing the late news. I'd anchor early in the late news, and I went outside. It was 112 degrees at midnight, and it had to be 1 or 2% humidity. It was dry, and I just said, no, this is not, for me, it's not right. So I actually tendered my resignation and left. I couldn't deal with the heat. You can handle it. Some people like it. It's okay. But for me, too hot. Here's that story. I got it to work, I think. This is KTNV in Las Vegas, and let's see what they have to say about the MGM Resorts story. We have a lot to cover this hour, so here's this television news story. It doesn't want to...
Or wherever you're streaming us, I'm Todd Quinones. Tricia has the night off, and 13 Action News reporter Alicia Patillo is live right now on the Strip. And Alicia, you talked to a former employee and also an expert who is saying that there's really just one way the Valley can recover.
It is really just devastating news. Well, come Monday, thousands of MGM employees will be out of work for good. That's a permanent decision coming straight from...
Oh, by the way, looking at this story, behind her, the Strip, one car went by. One. Now here's a couple more coming. Anyway, that's not Las Vegas. It is now.
CEO, and the company says that they just simply couldn't recover after shutting their doors in March due to COVID-19.
You lose your job at the spur of the moment, and it's like you don't know what to do.
Former MGM cocktail waitress Tiffany Chappelle has been out of work since March after the casino giant announced they were closing their doors due to COVID-19.
You can't find another job because a lot of places, they haven't even, brought back their staff, so they can't hire any new staff.
Like many others in the Valley, losing her job unexpectedly was a devastating blow and one she hasn't recovered from yet.
When you're laid off and you don't have a warning, it's like you don't know what your next step is. You don't know what to do next.
Now many others will face the same hardship as MGM CEO Bill Hornbuckle announced in a letter today. 18,000 employees will be out of a job come Monday. Hornbuckle says the company simply couldn't make up for the time lost when COVID-19 forced their doors to close in March.
I think it's inevitable given the way things have gone. It's very unfortunate, but it looks like it was going to happen.
Gaming and tourism expert David G. Schwartz said the loss of jobs will hurt our economy, and the only solution to repairing the economy is a vaccine for COVID.
Oh, interesting. Get your vaccine so you can enter the hotel and casino safely. That's what they're going to tell you. And if you don't have the vaccine, stay out in the parking lot.
Difficult to say what could be done at this point. I think a lot of it is out of our control. It has to do with getting a vaccine and getting travel in general back to where it was.
Well, Tiffany worked at MGM Casino for nearly 2 years, and she tells me that she cannot collect unemployment because Dieter says she didn't work enough hours. So she's been driving Lyft to make ends meet. Alicia Patillo, 13 Action News.
Well, there you go. There's just a little news story from a couple of days ago about this. I'm convinced, from my perspective, that unless Las Vegas begins to offer free round-trip airfare from all major hubs in the U.S., assuming the airlines are still flying, they're not going to be able to bring people back. That's just not going to happen. What's it look like to you? You've been there a long time. You know what's going on.
Yeah, so first of all, when that lady said Dieter, and I'll explain what Dieter is. Dieter is Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, which has been rife with corruption. The governor, literally, the moron governor we have here, has people that are amateurs trying to run it. People who have been trying to get their unemployment since March are still not getting their unemployment yet. It's amazing. They have not had a correction in that department, and that it's a disaster. The people call up, they're constantly having busy signals. The website constantly is under a crash. It always has error codes. People cannot file their unemployment, and when they do file their unemployment, there's such a case backload. They're talking now. Just again, he just had another news conference yesterday to extend, by the way, the eviction moratorium. So he extended it again for another 45 days.
Supposedly the feds are going to extend it. Yeah. And the feds are doing it until December 31st, New Year's Eve. So I guess they're expecting people to get evicted on New Year's. I don't know.
See, this is kind of amazing. This is amazing. The federal government has zero authority when it comes to evictions of people. Maybe if it's a HUD subsidized property, maybe they might have a little say-so in that. But what say-so does the federal government have to do with a private land owner of, say, 10 units or 5 units or whatever? People don't understand. I'll explain a little bit of something. Most people who own rental properties in the United States don't own big multi-unit apartment buildings. They own 2 or 3 houses, maybe 2 or 3 houses on one property. You see a lot of that in Southern California, where there's like 2 or 3 units on a property. They've done that for a lot of years down there. So a guy might own like 2 or 3 properties. They're small business people, and I guess you would consider that like a landlord is a small business owner who's just doing that for extra income, doing it for a long-term investment for something to pass down to their kids or whatever. Right now, if you look at just Nevada and California, it's been since March, and they closed the eviction courts down in the middle of March. People have not been paying rent since March, but the landlord who owns 2 or 3 houses only has been paying mortgages on them houses ever since. Don't worry, the county's also been collecting their property taxes, which if a state, my belief is this, if the state of California, which has now put a new 6-month extension on their moratorium, and the state of Nevada just extended it for another 45 days. Now we're talking, if this moratorium is allowed to expire in the middle of in October in this state, you'll have people who have been living in properties for 7.5 months for free. Not on top of all that, now in the middle of the night on a special legislative session, which they weren't even allowed, which is unconstitutional in this state. The only time they're allowed to call a special legislative session in Nevada is if it has to do with some type of fiscal matter. Extending, and making new rules for eviction court has nothing to do with financial matters. They have a new thing. It's called a mediation. So in Nevada, it used to be you could basically start eviction process immediately after the third day of them not paying their rent, right? So instead of serving a 10-day notice to quit privately, you actually do it in this state, which is the only state in the United States that does this. You actually file your 10-day notice to quit to a rentor through the justice court here. Okay? So now what they've done, they changed the law completely in the middle of the night unconstitutionally. They put a mediation now, whereas now it's going to take you 60 days to basically get someone evicted out of your house. So now you're talking 7.5 months of them not paying rent, and if they don't pay the rent, current rent, by the way, because let me explain how these moratoriums work. I'm just speaking for Nevada and California right now. You are not allowed to evict that person, by the way, for any rear amounts of rent due. So while this moratorium's been in effect, all these months that have built up, you cannot evict them. You can't use that as a cause for their eviction, by the way, for them not paying all the months of rent they owe. Now, they say, you're still on the hook for it. Well, what remedy does a landlord have to collect from the renter if you cannot evict them for the back amount rent due? Right? They're doing this in California also. Look, the California moratorium and Nevada is pretty much mirroring each other, by the way. So you will not be able to evict a renter out who owes you 7, 8, 9 months rent. So say the moratorium is allowed to expire in October, which I don't think it will, by the way. I think it's going to extend it again. I think it's going to be extended well into next year. You'll then, when you do try to go file for the eviction, that person will then now be allowed to stay for another 60 days if there's not a backlog. But there's going to be another backlog because the court's going to be flooded with eviction requests and filings. So that's what will happen then. You'll have another 6-7 months where these people will be allowed to stay in there for free. So ultimately, if it's allowed to expire in the middle of October, they will... At the end of the day, when the eviction finally goes through the court backlogs and through all these different things that these roadblocks they've set up for the landlords, I mean, technically someone could actually have been living in your rental property for 16 months for free. And you'll have no recourse to collect that money.
What happens to your ability to pay a mortgage on your rental property for 16 months? I mean, what if you can't do it? You lose the property.
And I think that's what, by the way, let me tell you, Jeff, I think that's one of the things of why they're doing this, by the way.
Well, they're supposed to be getting rid of middle-class property ownership. Yes. That's right.
Exactly. They want, see, who mostly owns rental properties? Well, I used to own a rental property in Southern California, and I got rid of it because it was just a nightmare. Even back then, when I owned it over 20-some years ago, it was still a nightmare to be a landlord in California. Most people are middle class, lower middle class to middle class, who basically they buy a couple of properties to basically have some type of inheritance to their family. The tax write-off advantage isn't that great. So it's not like you're getting all these big tax write-offs. You're not. You most of the time, if you can find decent renters, you're okay. But you always end up, it's a crapshoot if you're going to get a good renter or not. And let me explain what else is going to happen. A lot of these renters who are going to be evicted eventually will destroy the house. A lot of these people actually literally will steal the copper out of the walls. They destroy the house, and you cannot have them arrested for property damage all the way up to the day of eviction. So sheriff posts the door. They can literally wreck your house right in front of you up until the minute the sheriff comes to lock that door. And there's nothing you can do about it. All they'll tell you is, we'll take him to court and sue him. Well, good luck with that. Because most of the people, by the way, here's what's going to happen in Nevada. A lot of people, it's a very transient town, as you know. Already I've talked to various different people who have lost their jobs, who are already looking out of state for work. The economy's not coming back in Nevada. And here's a little thing that most people don't understand. With MGM, for example, Jim Murin, who used to be the CEO of MGM International, magically started selling off his stocks a few months before, and this is 2 different times. A few months before the Las Vegas massacre, he had sold a bunch of stocks for MGM. The second time he's unloaded a lot of his stock was months before COVID started.
They know.
And Jim, yes, of course.
Hold on, Gary. They look. When you're in that elite moneyed class of people, you know what's coming. There are no secrets. All right, hold on a minute. We'll be right back with Gary Holland. Okay, talking with Gary Holland about Nevada. What's going on there? You want to finish your thought if you remember where you were? Otherwise, I got something else for you here.
Yeah, so what I was talking about Jim Murin. So he again, like I said, he had sold them stocks off. When
twice.
As late twice. Months before the Las Vegas massacre. I think it was only a couple of months. And this time, I think the last time he was unloading a bunch of stocks was in November of last year. And then he resigned, by the way, and quit. Mm-hmm. And he also sold his property here. The guy disappeared out of town. But it's not just MGM. I had some family came into town. They stayed over at Circus last week. Went over there to visit. There were literally less people in that place than you would see at a video poker bar if it was opened. There was maybe about 10 people on the casino floor completely. The rooms were like very few people were renting rooms. It was so dead there. I didn't realize I was in Las Vegas, to be honest with you. It was that bad. I heard a casino, one of the floor managers talking to somebody, and she said, I've been here for 25 years. She goes, the numbers were okay when we opened for a few days. After a few days, we opened and the numbers will look like they were a little bit okay. But she said the numbers just dropped like literally off a cliff. And there was a new report that came out, I think, for July, and they said visitations was down 70% from the year before. And that was in July, after the casinos had been open for a month. Mm-hmm. The problem is they've closed all the bars again. So you go into a casino, none of the bars. This is how ridiculous the governor is here. So he ordered all bars to be closed again, right? So they allowed the bars to open for a week. Then they said, the COVID is spreading everywhere, and we have to close the bars down again. So he closed all the bars down, which employs, I'd say, at least a good 15% of the people in the valley that employed people are employed through a bar or some type of venue. The bars inside the casinos are closed, which is it's the most strangest thing. You can't be at a bar in a casino, but you can be 2 feet away at a machine next to the bar, right? It makes no sense. So all the bars inside the casinos are closed.
Is a tool, a dupe of the international power elite that's running this whole thing. Of course he is. He's a hypocrite. Well, here's the story, which you sent to me earlier. Nevada Governor Steve Sisolak responds to viral video showing him at dinner with live entertainment. Now, what's his trip with live entertainment?
Well, see, so a lot of the smaller bars, and even like the bars within the casinos have these lounge acts, right? Well, these guys have been all out of work. So you have, and apparently just on the west side of town, and they literally he put that live entertainment in just for him. By the way, this is the second time he's went against his own executive order. The first time, he was in a restaurant in Henderson without his mask on, taking pictures with everybody, like literally cheek to cheek with strangers, taking pictures. Yeah, right? He's no mask, no nothing. Now, this is the second time the guy's a hypocrite and a liar. He just is.
Here's a little bit on this. Now, I'm going to just play part of the news story. This, again, is KTNV. And then I'm going to jump ahead to where Sisolak defends himself. And it's very funny. This guy is not the brightest candle in the box either. Here.
Governor had dinner in Las Vegas where live entertainment was happening just feet away. The governor went on Twitter, then addressed it during a pointed news conference today.
And 13 Investigates reporter Joe Bartels is live right near Jones and Flamingo with the details on this story, Joe.
Yeah, Todd and Tricia, the edited version has been making the rounds on social media really all day of this video. We've learned it was taken at this Italian restaurant. The owner says he has taken a lot of heat from people, but the governor says despite the restrictions because of COVID-19, it's all within the letter of the law. 13 Investigates has obtained this raw version of a video circulating on social media showing a relaxing Saturday night at Manzu, an Italian restaurant in Las Vegas.
Now here's the table with 4 people and no masks anywhere to be seen. They're just having a good old time. The governor with his shirt open and his expanding waistline and just sitting there like a typical, I don't know what he is. Here's what they say.
In the audience, Governor Steve Sisolak and his wife Kathy enjoying the meal just feet away from the stage with a band and a singer.
It really is sad to me that a situation that was...
This is the owner of the restaurant.
...pretty standard and normal has turned into something that is controversial when there's no controversy.
All right, here's the governor defending himself now.
It's really sad to me.
On Monday, the governor fired back at critics who said his dinner was appearing to be in violation of his own rules.
That restaurant in particular did temperature checks on the way in. Everybody wore a mask. It was social distancing.
He lies. Nobody had a mask in there, and there was no social distancing. They're all sitting right next to each other. So he just lied twice. Temperature checks are worthless.
Did temperature checks on the way in. Everybody wore a mask. It was social distancing. They did extra cleaning in the restaurant. Ambient music.
Oh, they did extra cleaning. Now, look how he describes live entertainment. Literally 6-7 feet away from him. What's he call it?
Distancing. They did extra cleaning in the restaurant. Ambient music, as it's called, where people do not go buy a ticket to go to that, where people do not pay an admission, where that's not the purpose of the visit.
So the only difference between live entertainment in that restaurant and live entertainment at a concert venue is buying a ticket to see the live entertainment. This is amazing.
Allowed in a restaurant.
13 Investigates tracked down how the video came to light.
All right, doesn't matter. Anyhow, the guy's another just typical professional political phony.
Well, I'll give you the backstory on that. So what 13 was about to say, who brought that to light, was another lounge act who has been out of work. See, so he's at Ambient where they don't buy tickets. But that ain't true because every lounge act has been put out of work because he's closed the bars. Even at restaurants, by the way, are not allowed to have live entertainment. That's exactly according to his own executive order, no matter if you're buying a ticket or not. He straight out lied to people. It's what he did. It's completely lied. I mean, that whole situation with that music was set up at his request, and he's a friend of the owner of the restaurant. That's the reason why the owner of the restaurant's defending him.
Who was the singer? The restaurant owner's wife. Here's the origin of the video.
Is allowed in a restaurant.
13 Investigates tracked down how the video came to light.
The video was sent to me by folks that share these exact concerns. And I tried to replicate the emotions that they were feeling and what they were describing to me that evening.
Wally Eastwood says he represents a group of entertainers who want to perform again and were stunned by the governor's dinner. Doctors say the directives are meant to keep people from gathering in close proximity together, like how a live concert or similar venue would.
They didn't want there to be concerts or live entertainment where you had multiple crowds and tables and people drinking and people not social distancing. So it was kind of a twofold reason for there to be those restrictions.
That's some doctor talking. Okay. Anyhow, you get the idea. Hypocrisy through the roof. Doesn't matter what state you're in, where you look. There are very few governors with any honor anymore. It's bad. It's bad out there.
But this guy, I'm telling you, Jim, this guy takes the cake. I mean, he really does. He first of all, he's dumb. You know, if you hear him talk, he's just a very dumb guy.
I just heard him. Yeah.
he's like extremely overweight. He can't make up his mind on anything. He's killed the state economy. He literally, when they announced the schools were shutting down here, he basically told, or matter of fact, not only the schools, the whole economy. He gave the mayors of the 3 largest or 4 largest cities in this state, gave them a 5-minute notice. He is not very well liked by any of the mayors in this state. I mean, he spits orders at them and just completely blows them off. He attacked Carolyn Goodman for saying, "Hey, let's open the city up. My city's dying. We need help here." And the governor took it as a contest for him. He accused her of trying to outshine him or whatever he was trying to say. He's not. This guy is just, and he's completely goes against his own rules at turn after turn. And he's got to do. I would hope that the state, unfortunately, he's being backed by the culinary union for now. But the culinary union themselves have their own membership who are pretty much going against their own leadership. The leadership's trying to tell them, calm down, let's keep things closed. And the people are like, yeah, that would make sense if we had a job to go back to, but we have nothing to go back to now. And they're begging for jobs. Wynn, MGM, Caesars, Station Casinos, I'm talking about Boyd Gaming, these are the major players in this town, are all laying off thousands of workers and not calling any of their furloughed workers back. Until you go into any casino, Jeff, and there's maybe 1 cocktail waitress working the whole floor, 2 at most. When you used to have 12, 13, 14, 15 cocktail waitresses at a time. There's only 2. And then you have table games that are closed down. They've moved up the old table games and put automated table games in when you have an AI type of computer screen person talking to you. It's a very depressing scene. The nightclubs are all closed down. You go by the gift shops, and the gift shops are just one worker standing there with nothing to do. Nobody's in the gift shops buying anything. We're talking souvenirs that used to go $30, $40 are running. They're selling them now for $5, 50, 60, 70, 80% off. And I this is just as of last week when I was down at Circus. Every gift shop in that place had 70, 80% off all merchandise. And there was nobody there. Nobody buying anything. There's just, it's in bad shape.
Okay. What are the potential futures for Las Vegas? Let's just take one big gaming town. What are the futures for Clark County, the potentials? What could happen here? What's option 2? What's option 3? Or are there any options really to talk about?
The problem is, Jeff, think about this. Worldwide, you have people who have lost their jobs. It's not just in Nevada. There's every state you go to, there's massive job losses where a lot of people are not going to have their jobs back. And the ones who do have their jobs are so concerned with spending with people what they call leisure money, right, or expendable cash. They're not spending expendable cash.
Yeah,
if you have a job and you live in L.A., for instance, exactly. Right. If you have this, even if you have a little disposable income, if I live in L.A. right now, say 40 to 45% of all business comes from Southern California and Las Vegas. They drive in on the weekends from L.A. and Southern California. If I live in L.A. right now, where the unemployment rate is at least 50% of the people in L.A. County are unemployed, if I have a job in L.A., the last thing I'm going to do right now, because I'm not sure if I'm going to have my job in a week, I'm not going to take my savings and go to Las Vegas and have a good time. I mean, I don't know about you. I wouldn't do that, and a lot of other people aren't going to do that. You have two different people. You have people who have lost their jobs who are not going to do anything because they can't afford to. But then you have people who do have their jobs, but that are majority of the people who have employment right now are afraid they're next, and you're not going to just go out and spend money. People are not doing that. And then on top of everything else, they're being told, the COVID's expanding, and it's, if you're in a closed area, you're going to catch it. And of course, the fear-mongering for this since March has ingrained in their head. So they weigh all the options. Do I go to Las Vegas, spend money that I might need if I lose my job next week? And on top of all that, is it worth even doing that anyway? Because I might, get COVID. I might get sick. Is it worth even trying to go there? And when you do go there, it's like going into an ICU. There's people wearing masks. There's, the waitresses, when you do see a cocktail waitress, she's wearing full mask and gloves and all that weird and stuff. It's kind of like you're in an ICU, you're in intensive care unit. And you're like in a hospital. There's
what happens?
No enjoyment or nothing going on there.
What happens in Las Vegas? The fear-based public, for one, isn't going to go there. They're going to have to, like I say, set up major hub, free round-trip flights for people. They're going to have to go so far. But then we have this issue of if you don't have a vaccine card or some kind of a digital proof that you were vaccinated, you can't get into the hotel. They will let you into the casinos. That's coming. That's what's going to happen. They're going to force this on the public no matter what. And not just here, as Gary said, around the world. This is worldwide.
Yeah. And the economy is going to take 10... Easy. We're in a depression. If anyone believes we're not in a depression right now, we are in a hard. We never. First of all, we never got out of the last depression from 2008. We never got. Anyone who believes that we were ever out of that last economic slump, we weren't. Proof is by looking what it was like in 2006 up to even before COVID collapsed, whatever was left of the economy. There was nothing going on hardly. And there was a few new jobs created, but there's going to be no recovery I can't see for the foreseeable future. There's no disposable income in people who would normally travel here. They don't have the credit cards. And then let's put it this way. Everyone's ran their credit cards to max. You have probably, I'd say at least 75% of the unemployed people right now living off credit cards. And they're maxing out all their credit cards. So you're not going to even have credit card income where people could just come here and put everything on the card.
A lot of them know they're going to end up in bankruptcy, so they're maxing out their cards. Yep. That's what you do.
And survivability, by the way, it's a lot of it's due to survive. So
they're trying hard.
I think I read a thing last year. It was some type of report in one of these business magazines, local magazines here, that 60% of all visitors last year or the year before, I think in 18 and 17, I don't remember what year it was. It was one of them 2 years. 65% of the people who visited Las Vegas at that time had completely financed their trip with credit cards, including taking cash advances at the casino on their credit cards to gamble.
Wow.
So You've got a major issue. There's no disposable income. The credit's going to be tightened. Look, how many stories, Jeff, have you heard and I've read where the major banks, major financial institutions are pulling back on credit already? They're tightening the credit market. It's already being tightened. So
lines of credit are being frozen, yes, because they know there's going to be a major hyperinflation hitting soon. The dollar will be worth 25% less than it is. So why should they loan out money at full value, I'm using that in quotes, when it's going to be worth only 75% of what it was worth today in a month? They're not going to do it.
And here's another major problem, Jeff, with the casinos. So my family stayed at Circus. The room was really cheap. It was $14 a night. But they charge a resort fee and state taxes. The room actually turned into a $125 a night. Not because of the room rate, it was because of the resort fees and state taxes and state imposed fees, because there's a major fee that the state imposes for, guess what? To fund the Raiders Allegiant Stadium. And they can't... The casinos, you go to see, that's the other major problem. You rent a room, most people aren't going to stay now because of just the high amount of taxes and fees just to stay at that hotel. I would say maybe they would draw a few extra people if they would drop all the fees and all the resort fees and just charge a straight $14-15 a night to get people into the rooms at least, and maybe you'll get some people to throw some money in on the machines on the floor. The entertainment side of the casino business right now is gone. They were basically 60% of all profit at a casino was coming from entertainment. It wasn't coming from the gaming machines anymore. Food and entertainment made up actually 75%. It used to be gaming made up, the majority of the profits at a casino, but it didn't work that way anymore. Millennials and the new generations weren't, not big gamblers anyway. Right. So they had to switch over to entertainment, nightclubs, concerts, and all that. Well, all that's been taken away from them, and now they're saying, well, that's after phase 3 of this COVID, rollout. They're talking now. They're not looking at maybe the end of 2021 before they can even start thinking about having any concerts again. No. Maybe. So you're talking almost a year from now. By that time, half the entertainers in this town will be gone. They'll be gone. They can't stay here to survive. You got to leave. They're going to have to leave to other places. And so you that income source is gone. Right now, the only income source a casino has is the machines on the floor. That is their only income source. And if you're gonna go get a room for, that's advertised on a hotel, website, these wholesaler, these hotels.com and all these Travelocities, these wholesale sites where they unload rooms, and you say, $14 is a great deal, and when you show up to the room and it says, well, that was $14 for the room, but now we're going to have to charge you $100 and some for resort fees and another $170, $80 in state fees and taxes, and people are going to be like, I'll never come here again. They were saying that, by the way, even before the COVID hit, but now especially with the amount of income that people has been restricted, they don't have the disposable income. I would say at least one thing they could do right away is at least put a suspension on all resort fees and taxes that they're charging for people to stay.
Well, $14 a night room, even a $25 a night room would be pretty inviting to a lot of people. At least they'd get out of town. We can go up there and stay 2 nights for $50. We can do that.
Yep. But if you're going to go to a room and spend $400 still on a room for 2 nights, because that's pretty much close to what it is, with all the fees and then the resort fees, you're not going to come back. As a matter of fact, more than likely, if someone finds out, they might not even rent that room there at all, get back in their car and drive back to Southern California and sleep in their car for the night on the way back. I think they've lost a lot. I think maybe a good 15% right now of people who have gone into town, came into town here, found out about the resort fees and the taxes still being implemented, and they seen how high the room cost was. They're like, it's not worth it. They turned around and left. And they know this. They have to know this. You go and you look at the pools and stuff, and around these casinos, there's like nobody at the pools. That's telling you there's nobody staying at the hotels.
I don't understand how they're going to do it. I don't. It doesn't make any sense. As long as this virus is hanging over the heads of the populace, and the fear and the threats and the anxiety and the forced vaccinations and the false positives and all the testing issues that are being brought up all the time now, it can't go back to normal. It just can't happen. And if they force vaccines on people to the extent that you've got to have a vax card to get into a hotel or resort, to travel, to get an airplane ticket, to go into a restaurant, whatever, which they can do, and it may well happen, you're going to see a real strange situation here. It's bizarre. They came out today with news that, let me see if I can find this. Google and Apple have come up with a way. Oh, where is it here? Hold on, I got to find this. Here it is. Smartphones to alert users, your smartphone, if a coronavirus positive person or someone who has tested positive in the past is near you. No app needed. They're going to put this into the OS in the phones. Now, this is supposedly going to be a service for the phone owner, but we all know that the data will also be recorded and compiled by the surveillance state. And they may just issue you a note. Hey, you were near somebody who was infected. You better go get tested. And if you don't go get tested, you may have to stay home for 2 weeks. I mean, it's all on the table.